Welcome, everyone, to Higher Moment Mastermind. Good morning. I'm Shira Lotzar, happy to be your host today, along with my colleague, Fran Schellinger. Alki Thompson, who's normally with us these days, is not feeling too well, so we're praying that he feels better soon. But hope everybody's having a wonderful Christmas season, and we are delighted to have you here. This is an open Q&A for those. We have a couple new folks, and we are here to answer any job search question you would like. My background is I'm a recruiter. I'm also a career coach. Vern is a career coach. He's also a former HR executive. So we bring a lot of perspectives to the hiring process. We sort of see things on both sides of the hiring aisle, and we're just here to help. So who has a question that would like to kick us off? Ryan, you're a veteran here. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. The last time I was looking for jobs, I made a point of, and it was a local job search, and now my job search is more national. But I made a point of sending thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes, and oftentimes I would actually hand deliver them later in the day,
right,
or the next day, so that they didn't wait for the mail post.
Yep.
What is the thought today about thank you notes? Is email okay?
Yes. It's funny that you mentioned that. I just the other day had a coaching client actually asked me specifically about this. So this is kind of a little top of mind for me. Yes. Not only is it acceptable to do email, it's expected. And I'm going to say a couple of things about that. There are many employers who are sort of surprised when they don't receive a thank you note. It really is an expectation. Number one. Number two, send it within 24 hours of the interview. The client that had wrote me, she said, "Oh, I typically send them a few days later." And I'm like, "Ooh, 24." And then she wrote me back. She says, "Well, she had heard advice that you shouldn't send it 24 hours because it makes you look desperate." No. If the employer really wants to see that you've done that, not only that, but they often make quicker decisions than you think in terms of your candidacy. So if you're waiting a few days, those few days might be the pause that says, "Well, why didn't they write me a note?" And then that could infect your candidacy. So not that it's a huge deal, right? Because if they love you, they love you, but it's the icing on the cake that we need. And the other thing that I would say about that, and Vern would certainly love to hear from you too, a couple of things is when you're writing your note, be very thoughtful. Now, don't write a whole page, right? But don't write 3 lines either. Really personalize the note to that meeting. Something around your qualifications, your interest level, but also address something, at least one thing that was talked about, so that it's personalized, so that it's not just a cookie cutter. This is a standard thank you note I send to everybody. They need to know that you're actually addressing them. If you, the rule of thumb is write one note per interview. In other words, if you were on a panel interview, write the one note to the group. You do not have to split them up and have 5 notes to 5 different people. One note to the group. Now, if you had a meeting with one person, back to back a meeting with another person, then it's note. Okay. And then the last thing I would say, I know this should go without saying, but I just have to say it. No typos. Okay. Why am I saying that? Because people often will write these thank you notes quickly, especially if you're doing the 24-hour thing. It is so easy to have a typo in your thank you. I have had people lose an offer because there was a typo, like misspelling the name of the employer, misspelling your own name, semicolons, all of these things. Like you just don't think, right? It's a big deal. And that, of course, not only goes for your cover letter, your thank you note, it goes for your cover letter, it goes for your resume, it goes for every email that you send. Employers are looking at these things critically because, as I always like to say on these calls, they're trying to mitigate the risk. And every little thing that they're scrutinizing everything, they're trying to kind of find a reason, right, to say, this is a problem. And those little things can make a difference because they're saying, look, if this is this person's best foot forward and there's already mistakes, right? What does this say for the rest of their candidacy? So whether it's typos, whether it's your appearance, whether it's how you're coming across, I mean, all of these things, right, matter in these meetings. So I'll leave with that. Vern, anything else you want to compliment with that?
Well, just to pick up on the one thing that Chair just said, that they're looking for the one thing and going, if they're doing this, then forget about it. They're also looking for the positive affirmation, right? You write a great thank you note, you go,
Yeah.
I saw him in the interview, I saw
Yeah.
her in the interview,
Yeah.
and now I'm getting this thank you note. and
Yes.
It's really well crafted. They
Yes.
really put some thought into it. And the other thing about the thank you note, one suggestion is what was it in the interview that really caught your attention or excited you, or that could be part of, as Kira said, not 3 sentences. You could write a couple of sentences about, during the interview, when I heard about the XYZ project, I got
Yep.
really excited because, if you remember in my resume, this is something I've done before and I've been really successful at it. And I just, it looks like I could really add lots of value. I'm talking off the top of my head. You'll word it better than I did, but that's just a suggestion in terms of, making the thank you note thoughtful rather than thanks for the interview, right?
Yeah, and on top of which, because people are kind of looking for the human connection, always a good idea if there's something personal that came up in the, some of those like the banter that we have, you can do a PS. All the best on your upcoming blah blah with your kid or your whatever it is, right? Like something that they noted is always a nice way to warm things up.
That's right. Yeah.
Is there a difference between a thank you note in terms of timing? A thank you note for an interview versus a thank you note for like a networking appointment or an informational interview?
I say same rules apply, yeah, just the soon. Now, not necessarily 5 minutes later, although some people do that. But I wouldn't wait days. I would just, if anything, actually, and when I say 24 hours, I don't mean that you should wait 24 hours. I mean, do it within 24 hours. So for example, you have your interview at 1 o'clock, nothing wrong with sending it at 5 o'clock, right? Several hours later, but take your time, be thoughtful about what you write.
Yeah, the rule that I've been kind of following, or what I've been trying to, first of all, I've only had one. I had an interview last week, so that's good. And I sent a same day thank you note. And typically what I've been doing is if a meeting is on a Monday, I'm sending it by Wednesday. If a meeting Monday or Tuesday, I'm sending it by Wednesday. And if it's on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, I'm sending it before the weekend.
I probably, push that up. Yeah. I would definitely encourage you to push it up more to the same day or within 24 hours. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good question. Thank you. Maria.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to just add one thing to that. It's something that I've not done when I've been job searching, but I know it's something important to do, and I thought about it afterwards. I think someone might have even mentioned it to me. They said to go ahead and write your thank you note before the interview. Just have a rough draft of what you want to send, and then that way, once the interview is over, you might be able to send it a little quicker, maybe almost immediately after the interview.
Yeah, and as long as you do that little personalization, right?
Right.
Yeah, a rough draft.
Yeah.
Could be helpful for sure.
Yeah.
And I have a question too, when you mentioned, because I have had interviews with groups of folks, and I typically would send a thank you to all of them. So are you saying rather than sending it to individual people, just send it to one person who's going to forward it to everybody?
Well, okay. So that depends on how you do it, right? One way, if you have everybody's email address, I would send it as a group email, okay? Because they interviewed you as a group. It was one conversation. Or if you don't have everybody's email, well, first of all, try to get everybody's email. So if you have the HR person say, hey, can I have everybody's email? If that person decides not to give it to you, say, it's okay. Write it to the HR person or whoever your point of contact is and say, would you kindly forward this? Dear so-and-so HR person, it was a pleasure to meet with you and the team, or you and the blah, blah, or you and so-and-so, 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 right? And then just have them forward it.
Yeah, in those panel interviews, it's always good if you can grab business cards from people.
If you're in person, sure.
Yeah, if you're in person. So yeah.
All right, thank you.
You can always ask that. And that also goes, it's also connected to that is when you're preparing for the interview and the HR person or whomever is scheduling, make sure to get everybody's name, look up their LinkedIn profiles, right? Ask for the email address at that time and say, I'd like to prepare, have the email. So for future thinking, so try to, you're allowed to ask all those things. It's fine. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Kyoko, any questions?
yeah, it may not applicable to Maria and Brian, but I started job search from May. Because I was laid off, and company told me May, and my position was terminated in July. I had to work till end of June to finish all my projects. And then, anyway, my simple question is, what's your advice when I feel like I'm a little bit burned out by job searching? What happened to me was like 1 month ago, I was offered a job and they canceled it when when I started negotiating salary. I was so surprised. It was $1 billion revenue global corporation. The hiring manager was UK. Anyway, and then another job, I had like 5 interviews, and in the end, they asked me a reference, like at least 2 supervisors, 2 direct report. I had a supervisors, but I didn't have a direct report references. I made an effort to contact quickly and get the permission from direct report and would send it. And then I never heard back, not even a thank you by providing reference. And reference people told me, oh, nobody contacted. So I contacted the company, say, oh, they chose another person. So it was like, took me a couple of months for that position, going through 5 interviews, even in person. So then after that, I had another hiring manager interview, but I felt I didn't do well, that one. I felt like a little bit, I'm just starting burning out, because every company I apply and have an interview, I do thorough research about company and makeup. So what's your advice? How do I do it?
So this is, first of all, Kyoko, this is very, very normal. Let me just start by
Okay.
saying that. This is the
Okay.
most normal thing in the world. You are expected, right, by employers to, oh, Susan Nickbarg, wow. It is very normal and expected for you to put in effort when you are applying, when you are preparing for interviews. It's work. It can be a lot of work. And sometimes it can be a lot of work, okay? Like they could be asking you, good morning, Susan, good to see you. It's been a long time. But it could be a lot of work. I mean, it could be, they ask you to do a presentation. It could be they could, have some big assignment. That's normal. And it is what it is, right? And there are people sometimes who spend a long time in job search. And it's a little bit more like you have to look at this as a marathon, not a sprint. Okay. In fact, I'll even make an analogy for you. So some of us on this call, myself included, Vern, and I know Susan has also done this, is, consultants go through this a lot. Okay. So when a consultant is doing business development, right? They are engaging with prospective clients, and the client might send an RFP, request for proposal. They might ask you to do things to prove to them that you are qualified. Well, guess what? We could spend all these hours working on a proposal and not get the assignment, right? Because we're competing with other companies who are vying for this. It's normal. It's just part of the process. You just sort of have to be like, okay, right? This wasn't the right one that God had for me. So what's the next one? And you just sort of put your head down and you put as much effort as you can put in, right? To do a good job, but also understand that it may not be the right one. And you might now sometimes you can actually repurpose things. So it might be, for example, let's say your cover letter. You may have some things that can be templatized. I'm making up a word, right? To have things that are a little bit like, okay, because you're in a certain profession. So it's possible that, some of the employers that they're asking you for things, for example, your cover letter, there might be some things that you can have that are kind of standardized, where you can customize a little bit to save yourself a little bit of time. Or maybe as you're doing your research, you get into a rhythm of how you're doing your research, so that again, it becomes a little more routinized. That can help. But as far as the burnout, I would just encourage you to go, okay, right? What's the next thing on my plate? Vern, do you have other thoughts around that?
Well, I just said this a lot on this call. The job search process is like an emotional roller coaster. because as you work and do all of that work and you're getting close and you're one of the 2 or 3 final candidates, I mean, you're getting pretty excited about the possibility you're going to land this job.
Right.
And then you're
Right.
told you're not.
Then something happens,
Then it's
right?
the emotion.
Yeah,
Now
the
all of the
counseling,
positive
counseling offer
emotions.
was surprise.
Yeah.
Within a
All of
week,
those,
everything happened within a week. Got offer
Yeah.
Monday, Friday, hiring manager say, oh, you are not good fit, counseling. After I started negotiating salary.
Yeah, that's
Oh, yeah.
unusual. That's that part's
Yeah,
unusual.
that was
That
surprise.
they would pull it that fast. I will share with you for whatever it's worth, because Vern and I do see things on both sides of the hiring aisle. Employers go through this too. Okay, when an employer is going through their process of vetting candidates, plenty of times candidates will flake out. Candidates won't show up for interviews. Candidates will give every indication that they are interested in the role, don't accept the offer, or maybe they're in the process of negotiation and they pull out, or they've got other opportunities, or right there's so both sides actually have this experience. You may not be aware of the other side, but I am, and I hear this all the time, and they get frustrated, or they see. I remember years ago, I was doing a search and we extended an offer to a candidate. He accepted the job. He then turned around and accepted a counter offer from his employer. It does happen. And so we were like, oh, we were disappointed. But wait, so the candidate came back to us after he had gotten this offer and said, oh, no, I want to reconsider the opportunity. And we said, wait, you just accepted a counter offer. And he goes, I'm not, this is exactly what he said. He goes, well, I'm former military and my word is my bond. I'm not going to do that again. Guess what? He did it again. He accepted another count. I mean, it was like, things happen, things happen. So I would just say that, pack your patience in these things. You never know what's happening on the other side. You never know. There was this last minute candidate that came in that had all the perfect qualifications, or something happened with a hiring manager. A million things that can be happening behind the scenes. Your job, be patient, do your research, be thorough. Like Vern was saying, check your emotions, right? Might be right, might be not, and you just keep on going like a marathon.
Yeah. If you want to take a couple days to be frustrated and punch up, a punching bag or something, like do that. But then you've got to get back
on this in the
You
saddle.
got to get back on. You can't bring those negative emotions to the next
No.
opportunity.
They'll feel it.
Yeah.
They will feel it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So.
And also shows your resilience, right? Because then you're on the job and stuff's going to happen, right? How resilient are you when things don't go so well?
Yeah.
I always do volunteer something outside of myself when I'm in that between doorways moments, because it gives me a focus outside of myself. Brings your energy up, and you're doing something good.
Absolutely. And give back, right? There's all kinds of reasons, good reasons to volunteer.
One of the other things that can help you in that situation is again, reaching out to the people in your network who are your key supporters, your advocates, and, sharing your emotions with them. And again, they'll certainly, hopefully help you get through that, down period where you just lost the offer that you thought was the ideal offer. And you thought this job search thing was finally going to come to an end. People in your network can be really supportive if you've got, really good relationships with them. So.
Thank you for that question, Kyoko.
Yeah.
All right. Susan, any questions from you?
First of all, happy holidays to you, Sheila, and family. Shara, I always say that, Shara. Thanks and thank you for having these calls. I popped on for a question. You did a really great job working with me earlier in the year on my resume refresh. It's been to good use. And I have gotten some consulting work since then, and I've decided to work with that because money in the bank is good, and it stalled my job search. And I'd like to get back to that because my ultimate goal is, and it's been a hard pivot, is to get out of contracting and consulting, but that's what I keep getting calls for. And my question is, we had put my resume, I had a long consulting history, and then my last role was 5 years as a consultant working as an employee, but consultant. And I haven't updated my LinkedIn profile or resume, but we're entering 2024. And I wanted to ask your advice about the best way to handle the presentation of history, since I have, let's just call it 20 years of consulting. The last 5 in this role and the last 6 have been consulting again. What's the best way, if your goal isn't to continue to get project work, to handle that on format?
So, so maybe just add one more data point in here. So I know you had a full-time, well, it was sort of I don't know, was it
full-time? It was a full-time
that role
job
that you
filled
and I
as a
know
consultant.
that was a full-time role, right? And that
Yeah,
ended.
You're working as a contractor basically for a
Yeah.
company, right?
Yeah.
Right, but
Yeah.
it was a full-time,
Yeah.
Yeah, that ended June.
June.
That ended June. And I've
Okay,
been
the one that with the healthcare
it was
organization.
a 5-year,
Yeah.
was billed under my business, but I was working as an employee essentially.
Okay. So actually for all intents and purposes, you walked and talked like an employee, even though you had like a different legal, arrangement with them.
Correct.
What I do in situations like that is I actually list the employer. This is how you do it properly. Okay.
I'm listening, taking notes.
Yeah, sure. So you list, and I won't say this, I know this is a public call, so I'll just say, you list the healthcare organization that you were with, right?
Mhm.
Your title. And then you have to choose where you put this, but you could put either in parens next to the title, contractor, or in the description itself, something like, served as a, contractor in a full-time capacity, something like that. But basically explain very quickly and briefly the legal status of your employment so that people know it wasn't officially, you were not a full-time employee, but you acted like one.
Mhm.
Right? Because at the end of the day, all that people care is, what did you do? Right? Who did you do it for? And then the fact that whether you were contracting, whether you were full-time, whether you were under a different contractor, that's a little bit less relevant than the actual work and the substance that you did. And that's how you want to be sharing. Now, that said, let me flip it. Let's say it was a different scenario. Let's say you were not really there full-time. It was just one of several clients, and you did a project here, a project there, then you would flip it and you would put the name of your business.
That's my exact question. The 6 months following have been project work on top of the role.
That's that. Okay, so that 6-month project work.
Do I just leave it and look like I've been unemployed since June, or do I?
No, I
put
would
my
actually
business back on?
I put your
I
business
wasn't
back
sure
up.
how to-
So mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so your company's called SVN Marketing, if I recall. Yeah. So you've had the SVN, basically last 6 months, and the little description of what you've been doing. Right underneath that, the healthcare organization, and right underneath that, put the SVM again. That's one way to do it. I would actually encourage you to do it that way if you're trying to showcase your full-time employee, because the other option, which in your case,
hang on. Before the healthcare organization, I was SVN for like 15 years. So I'm trying to figure out how to handle that.
Right. So I would, because the healthcare organization was under your SVN, yeah?
I was paid through, I was paid that way, but yes.
And then you would literally say that in that job description, contractor through SVN. But you'd list it as its own position, because
It would be SVN 6 months.
Healthcare organization with a contracting note, and then SVN for 15 years.
Oh, okay. Will that be competitive for me?
Yeah.
I know it's honest, but will it be competitive?
I think so. And by the way, you're welcome to give me a quick call offline if you want to go through the nuances of that, so I can help you nuance it a little bit.
Okay, thank you. I will. And do I need to do that on my LinkedIn profile also?
I would. I absolutely would. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I think the key thing, Susan, is, again, and I think Shira said this, what are your skills? What are your expertise? And how do you, and finding jobs, finding opportunities that match your skills and expertise. And as long as your resume shows those skills and expertise, the format's important, but hopefully the employer is looking at your skills, your expertise, what you've accomplished. And if it's matching what they're looking for and whatever the role is, that's going to be the bigger determination in terms of, moving
so
forward.
Just what I would share though, and actually I'm sharing this for anybody who has done on this call, who's done consulting work. Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think maybe the thing you're trying to overcome or you're trying to anticipate is the fact that sometimes employers, when they see a long stretch of consulting work, sometimes have a bias, right? To say, oh, she's been a consultant for this many years. Is she going to be okay coming back into a full-time opportunity, reporting to somebody, having somebody as authority over her? And that can be a misperception with employers. So I appreciate, Susan, if that's why you're doing it, I can appreciate that you're trying to show that kind of full-time, employment.
Actually, I was more concerned with, since I'm in the second half of my career, and the first half of my career with progressive corporate jobs has to drop off to just to mention earlier career includes names.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about going neck to neck with someone who has been in organizations for 15 years as being safer,
Mhm.
not so much for reporting, but for know-how or networking and or younger. And I was close on 2 opportunities. And when I looked up who got the job, and I'm not saying it's because of age, but coincidentally, they were younger.
Yeah.
So I was worried that such a long history and would, if it's between me and another candidate, would not be in my favor rather than the versatility. It is what it is versus the versatility it shows.
Yeah. I think the way we're talking about doing it with having that healthcare employer prominent is going to be important.
Okay, thank you for your advice. And
Again, this is for everybody because Shira and I talk about this all the time. One of the ways to overcome that, Susan, is to find a champion who is someone who knows the hiring manager, works for that company, somebody who knows, is a good friend of the hiring manager, somebody or the HR person, somebody on the inside who can say, you really need to talk to Susan because I think she's a great fit for this job. That will hopefully get you the interview. No guarantees, even though you get the interview, they're interviewing other people, but as opposed to your concerns about they're going to look at the resume and you won't even get the interview. So keeping in touch with in fact, if you have very, really solid, trust-based, mutually beneficial relationships with people, talk to them about the same thing you're talking to Shira and I about, and see what their advice is and how they might support you. And do they know anybody at particular organizations that you might be targeting?
got it.
And along those lines, again, this is for everyone. For anybody who has a bit of a different kind of a background, whether it's a little unusual, right? So Susan has that consulting stint. For some of you, you might be doing a career pivot. Maybe your background's a little eclectic. You've had some short tenure, whatever it is that makes you feel like, I'm going to be a little bit of risk for somebody. All the more reason why your network needs to be strong. So when Vern was talking about finding an internal champion, even beyond that, to the extent that you can be networking out there and accessing jobs that are hidden from the market, where employers are searching for you, not on LinkedIn, meaning they're not going on Indeed, they're not going on the job boards, they are just calling their network. That actually is a way to overcome a different kind of resume, because then your reputation is preceding you. You are showing up before your resume. And so what happens is the employer is more likely to overlook certain things because somebody referred you. Oh, you got to talk to Susan. Oh, you got to talk to Maria. Oh, she's so great. Even though her resume isn't exactly what you're looking for, the employer is much more like, okay, I'll interview her anyway. And then once you get in front of them, right, you can sell yourself. But if all you're doing is relying on the strength of that two-dimensional piece of paper where they don't know you and your qualifications and your wonderfulness, right? All you're doing, the only thing you've got to sell yourself with is that piece of paper, which could get lost in cyberspace. Maybe they've got the wrong keywords on there. Maybe they're screening for this, and this, and you don't have an opportunity to overcome stuff. I have, as a recruiter, had that happen many times where I'm looking at a resume and every once in a while I'm like, you know what? Let me just reach out. Good thing I did, because the candidate was able to overcome something on the resume that I made an assumption about. Now, I can't do that all the time. I can't take the time to interview 50 people, right? Sometimes I can do it, but a lot of times I can't. And how many people have I inadvertently screened out? They could have been qualified, but their resume didn't indicate the things that I needed to see. But every once in a while, I'll be able to do it unless they customize the resume, unless they let me know on that piece of paper that they truly are qualified. They're not overqualified. They're not underqualified. They got the right skills. That they've actually read the job description and customized their resume for the job. If you don't customize your resume, most people, they're not mind readers. They can't see how you are connected. You've got to use the keywords that they have. So this is a long-winded way of saying your networking is important, the customization is important, but to the extent that you have relationships or can leverage relationships, that can be super helpful in getting noticed when otherwise your resume wouldn't be telling the story.
The last 3 jobs that I had in my career came to me from people in my network. And to Shira's point, it was a hidden job market. Those jobs were not posted anywhere. And luckily I was able to get all 3 of those jobs. So the hidden job market's a real thing.
It really is. Yeah, I was coaching somebody yesterday, and she's a corporate professional, meaning her whole background is corporate. And she said, Sherry, I've got this interview with a nonprofit. I'm thinking, I'm looking at her background, thinking, what kind of nonprofit would actually want her particular background? It didn't even make any sense to me. And she tells me about this, and I saw there actually is a link. I said, how'd you get this opportunity? She said, it was my network. She's planted so many seeds. Somebody found her on LinkedIn, and through her networking, and they reached out to her because they heard that she had this kind of background, and that's exactly what they actually needed, a corporate background for this for a particular reason. But had she not been networking, they wouldn't have come her way. So it's very important. You never know the seeds that you plant in networking and how they're going to sprout. Plant lots and lots and lots of seeds. I always say this, it's like a farmer, right? The farmer plants more seeds than they need because the birds and the wind and the rain are going to wash away a whole bunch. But every once in a while, right, the soil's fertile enough and it'll pop, and you never know what's going to pop. So have a big funnel of opportunities, a big funnel of your network, because a lot of that stuff's not going to work. But then there's the few opportunities that actually will, right? So have an abundance mentality when you're networking.
On that point, Shara, do you have any comments about effective LinkedIn networking? I've had people cold call me and I've had good meetings, but I haven't done the reverse, and they're usually effective. I've had different forms of it, but I think it'd be great to hear what you have to say, because I think that's going to be a big resource for a lot of folks.
So the first thing is, I'm just going to reiterate what I just said, but for a different reason. In LinkedIn, so relationship rules apply. Okay, with LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a database. Well, at least there's a search bar in the upper left-hand corner. That's what, Susan, you're talking about, right? In terms of reaching out, finding people to reach out to. So it's a database. Relationship rules apply. So when you're reaching out, you want to be thinking about, well, how can I make a warm connection with this person, even if it's a cold connection? Whether that is really deep diving in their background, in that connection invitation, mentioning something that is relevant, something that interests you, a connection that you might have. In addition, if the person hopefully is a second level contact, that of course means you have at least one mutual connection. I will tell you there's a glitch on LinkedIn. I don't know why it happens. Every so often, LinkedIn actually is not showing you who the mutual contact is. I don't know why that's happening, but it does once in a while. But usually it works. You can always name drop. Now, if you name drop, you got to be careful in how you do that. Of course, you would not say, hi, Susie, John Smith referred me to you. When John Smith didn't refer you, you can say, hi, Susie, you and I are mutually connected through John Smith. That's perfectly appropriate. And then another little line or two about where you think there might be some synergies and why you'd want to connect. Send those notes. Send lots of those notes, okay? The birds and the wind and the rain apply here. AKA, lots of gainfully employed people don't check their LinkedIn, okay? They don't check their they don't check their invitations, they don't check their messages, they just don't check it. And even if they do, if you send a connection invitation, you've all probably had this happen on your own desk. Somebody sends you a connection invitation, they write a little note, you decide to accept it, and then what? Well, if that person actually said something interesting, like an ask, hey, do you want to meet on a Zoom call? They've asked you this, right? You want to meet, whatever. Number one, you get busy. You might think, say yes, you get busy, you just forget to write back. Or you accept the invitation, but then depending on where, I'm getting technical here, but depending on where you just accepted it, for example, if you did it on your phone, okay, you may not see that note pop up again in your messages to actually write them back. Whereas if you're on your PC, you'll accept it. It'll pop up as a box now, prompting you to write a message back. But again, you might be busy, you might forget, you might whatever. And the same thing happens with your colleagues, okay? And so just because they accept it may not mean that they write back. So what you do, knowing that, is you do the follow-up. The second that they write you back, thanks for accepting my invitation, Susie. Wanted to see if you might be open to a quick Zoom call. Love to get to know you, explore synergies or whatever, right? Put the prompter back in there. But again, they get busy, they're well-meaning, or they just, whatever, they just don't respond. Abundance mentality, plant. You never know. Gosh, 2 months later, a person could write you back. You know, even if they are active on LinkedIn. In fact, I would say the opposite. Especially if they are active on LinkedIn, they might have a lot of messages that they're constantly going through. So they might see your message, have every intention to respond, and guess what? They've got 10 more messages going on. Does that make sense? So it can be for either reason that they don't respond. You do a gentle follow-up. If it's really somebody that you want to connect with, do a little nudge, and you never know. Somebody's in the right frame of mind, they have the right space. Right now, of course, is a great time because things are a little slower. You know, end of December, end of August are the 2 times in the year that things get a little slow down and people may be a little bit more open and receptive. Those are a couple of tips I have. Erin, any thoughts?
No, I'd agree with everything that Shira is saying on LinkedIn. What can happen on LinkedIn also is, you know, when people reach out to me and I look at their profile, or is there a reason why I should connect with them? And I will connect with them. And my note always says, would you like more than a digital connection? Because that's all it is at that point. When you hit the button, you're connected digitally, right? The person doesn't know anything about you. You don't, well, other than what you might see on the LinkedIn profile. And if there's somebody to become your champion, for somebody to develop a relationship with, you've got to have, you know, some multiple conversations with them so that they can learn about you. You can teach them about you. You can learn about them. And, you know, the contacts count mantra is networking is about teaching and giving. So the more you teach people about who you are, what you're looking for, what your skills are, what your expertise is, the greater likelihood, then their antennas will be up. And if they see an opportunity that fits your skills and expertise, then they're going to, hopefully, Shira said, get back to you and say, hey, Susan, I saw this opportunity, or I found out about this opportunity. It might be part of the hidden job market, and they're going to get back to you. And at the same time, make sure that you're learning as much about them so that you can help them even in the simplest of ways. Hey, Susan, I saw this article that I thought you'd like. Would you like me to send it along?
Yeah.
Susan, there's someone in my network that I know, might be a great, connection for you. Would you like me to introduce you? I mean, some of these give backs can be so simple and people appreciate that. And when you do that a lot, people start to, that enhances your personal reputation, your personal brand. People start to see you as someone who is
A
giving,
giver.
a giver, and at the same, and because you're giving, the law of reciprocity kind of kicks in, and they feel like they would like to help you. Now, the one thing about reciprocity that kind of bugs me is it shouldn't feel like you're obligated. In other words, that's not, in my mind, not reciprocity. Reciprocity is I'm helping you, you're helping me, and we'll do it whenever we can and whenever we see opportunities. But you should never feel if somebody's saying, well, I helped you, you have to help me. That's reciprocity, but it's kind of forced. It's manipulative. So just, and you're smart enough to figure out who you're dealing with. So just be aware of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maria?
Thank you. I have a question too, sort of in that regard with LinkedIn. I have typically when I receive invites from folks that I know, they ask me to add them to my um, list of connections. I typically do that. But I'd also read somewhere, and it might have been on LinkedIn, I'm not sure, that said that when you're sending invites out to folks, that you really shouldn't do the automatic, because I know LinkedIn will just prompt you to send connections. And
Yeah.
I've typically just not ever done that. I usually just do my personal one, just send, just say who I am and
Yeah.
would like to be a part of your network, even though it's someone I know. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to ask what your opinion is on that.
Oh, that's interesting. There's somebody that you know. So it's interesting. I myself, if I like really know somebody, okay,
Yeah.
I actually don't have a problem with just sending the quick connect because they know who I am and of course
Okay.
they're going to say yes. If it's like a really like if for whatever reason Vern and I were not connected or Susan and I were not, I've known both of these individuals for many years, right? If for whatever reason I could just send they'd accept my invitation, right? But if it's somebody who maybe you've met in the past, they may not remember you, or maybe it's just been a long time. I would definitely, in that case, I would say, oh, John, it's been a long time, blast from the past, love to connect. That I would warm it up. But certainly if it's somebody that you don't know, or somebody that, you barely know, for sure, do that, because people otherwise think it's sort of spammy. But I will give you guys a technical tip. So, in fact, I'm going to share screen to do this because otherwise it won't make sense. So let me just do this. Okay, and I'm going to give you two little technical tips that are related. All right, here's the first one. All right, so in your networking, the My Network tab, right here. Yeah. Let's say, here's an interesting one. Okay, this individual. So she and I actually had a Zoom call and we're, connected professionally now, but notice there's no invitation. No problem by me. I'm going to accept it because I know who she is. She just, quickly sent it up. So that's actually a perfect example. But anyway, so in your network, let's say one of the ways that you are looking for making connections is to go to My Network tab and look at the suggestions that LinkedIn is offering you, which they do all the time, okay? So let's say I'm scrolling down here and there's this individual, okay? Let's just say for whatever reason, like, oh, I totally forgot about him. Like I should be connected. Here's a technical tip for you. Ready? Listen up. Do not hit the connect button on this page. Why not? Because the way LinkedIn is set up, I don't know why. I think I know why, but I don't really know why. If you hit the connect button on this page, it will automatically send a generic invitation, okay? It just does that. If I hit connect right now, it will not give me an opportunity to personalize this invitation. I kind of think I know why. I think it's because this particular page, it's just all of these different like possible connections, and it kind of makes it easy for you to go connect. And LinkedIn kind of wants you to make connections. That's why I think. But anyway, how do you get around that? You open up the person's profile from that page. Now, if I hit the connect button, now I can say add a note. Okay. So that's a very important thing. Something else. If you're doing this from, and I can't show this to you, of course, but if you're doing this from your phone and you have a person's profile pulled up on your phone, if you usually, if I recall correctly, I could try it now just to remember, but as I recall, if you hit the connect button from imagine this page is open on your phone, on your LinkedIn app. If you hit the connect button from your phone app, as I recall, it's also going to do that. It's going to send a generic invitation. So what you have to do is you have to click the three dots. You're not going to see that on your PC, but you'll see that on their page. The three little ellipse dots in the upper right-hand corner, drop down, and it'll say personalize invite. Personalize invite on your page on your phone. Okay. The other last thing I'll share with you is, sometimes.
Shara, would you do that one more time? You
Sure.
click more, you click more.
Sure. What the advice I'm giving you is actually not about this. So forget what you're seeing on the screen right now. Okay. Imagine you're on your phone. You've pulled open your LinkedIn app. You pulled up this individual on your app. You see his picture. I mean, meaning you see his whole profile on the app. If you hit the connect button on the app, it's likely going to just send a generic invitation. So on that app, in the upper right-hand corner, click the little 3 dots, drop down to personalize invite.
It's on the app only.
On the app only. On this page, though, on your PC, you can hit the connect button, no problem. Then the other thing I just want to share is, do you see how, in fact, I'll put this person, this is a good example. Do you see how this person, Lauren, okay, has a follow button here? I actually have one on my own profile. I don't believe that Lauren gave herself, maybe I don't know, her or him, a follow button, and I certainly did myself. I know in my case, I have almost 30,000 connections, and LinkedIn just made a decision. I'm an open networker, so it's like, this is kind of how I do it. But LinkedIn, I think, made a decision to put a follow button so that I probably wouldn't overdo my connections, because you actually can't have more than 30,000. But here's the thing, even if you see a follow button, you don't just have to follow. You can still connect. How do you connect with Lauren? Now you hit the more button and you'll see connect down here. Okay, so you don't, even though you see follow, you can still do more and hit connect. Is that helpful? All these little technical tips. And by the way, LinkedIn's changing all the time. They've been doing this for years. Every once in a while, like I'll do a training on LinkedIn. And like literally as I'm doing the training, something changes. Things happen all the time. So just keep up when you're looking, don't assume everything's going to be static. Okay. Speaking of that, I don't really usually mention this on this call, but I probably should. I do a regular LinkedIn training for an organization called JCA. They have, and you guys should know about this organization. It's a nonprofit, and they have a program called the Career Gateway. It's a week-long program. It does cost $75, but I should say it only costs $75. It's 5 days long. It's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, all day long. They do, of course, the assumption is that people are all in transition, right? That's how you can afford to spend the time. It's geared toward 50+ professionals. And they bring in speakers. So I happen to be one of them. And they bring me in on that second Monday to do a 2-hour LinkedIn training. And so I'm always sort of talking about kind of what's going on with LinkedIn. And so I'm going to share with, and I've done this in the past where even if you're not a part of the program, if you're my guest, you can join for free on for my presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat. Let me just see here. I'm going to put in the chat the name of the coordinator of the program. Her name is Jody Rash. And if you ever want to join, hold on.
Sheila, are you doing that for an hour or half a
2
day?
hours. It's 2 hours. It's always on a Monday from 9:30 to 11:30. And my next one coming up is in January. I do them every other month. So this one's going to be on January 22nd, 9:30 to 11:30 Eastern.
Do they record them, or do you need to be live?
They do record them. They do record them. In fact, I actually have one of those trainings on my own website, but it's from a couple years ago, and I'll put that in the link. But of course, if you want a more updated, training, you can see the normal one. But let me give you.
I meant if you're not able to go in person, but
right,
register, then they send you
they do, but you have to ask Jody.
Register. If you don't register, you don't get the link, right?
Well, I was just going to say it because now that I'm thinking about it, yes, they do record everything. However, I don't think they can just sort of splice off my presentation. You'd have to get the whole thing, which means they probably want you to pay, for the whole thing. So in this case, I mean, I'm probably due for asking them to splice off mine, which they did do for me personally once. But what I will do is put in the chat on this page of my website. It has a list of my job search presentations, a bunch of them. One of them is called Using LinkedIn Like a Pro. So if you scroll halfway down the page, Using LinkedIn Like a Pro, that is that JCA presentation a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Okay. But I probably should ask them to to do me a favor and give me a new splice for this upcoming one. And it is a bit of a fire hose because I not only answer questions, I do full training.
It sounds very useful. You have some tactical tips that make a difference.
Yeah, what I do in that presentation is I do two things. I help people create a LinkedIn profile to be found better, a compelling profile, especially your headline and your about section, so that your brand stands out, that the right employers and the right network can find you. In other words, when they see you, right, that you're speaking to aspirationally where you're going. And then the other training that I do is how to do searches. So we recruiters use the search feature all the time to find candidates. So I teach you how to be like us. So even in my career coaching, I do that too. I do private trainings, but this is a public training, and I show people kind of how to leverage the all filters tab and how to do, make connections and what you do and all these different things. So it's sort of both. It's the branding side and it's also the searching side.
Steve, I have a question about LinkedIn. This is Kyoko. Can you hear me?
I can.
So it didn't happen to me, but this week when I was sending my note to connect, it said unless I have a premium, I cannot send personal message. Is this something new? It didn't happen to me before.
So Kyoko, let me just pause. Whatever you just said got garbled. Can you say that again? What was the message that you received?
Oh.
Can you just say it again?
Okay. I couldn't send personal note to connect after I send like 4 or 5 people.
Yeah.
It say I need a premium service.
Okay.
Is that
I'll tell you
something new?
Yes, it is. Thank you for bringing this up. Yes, this is a brand new problem. Okay. It's a problem for job seekers. When I heard about this, in fact, the first thing I did was I wrote to Elise Barnes, who's the person who does the Career Gateway program, because she's also a LinkedIn trainer. And I was like, Elise, did you see what just happened? Microsoft, that owns LinkedIn, is trying to make some money. They've changed their business model, and here's what's going on. Now, I don't know whether they've rolled this out to everybody or they're beta testing it with certain people, but Kyoko, unfortunately, you're now part of it. And what they're doing is they're saying, if you have a free account, you can only send, I think it's up to 10 invitations a month for free.
I see.
And then you have to upgrade to premium. So that's their new business model, which is a big problem, of course, for job seekers, because everybody's used to sending a lot of invitations. So which means that you have to be very selective in the connections that you send, or you need to upgrade to premium. So yeah, that's a new feature, and it literally happened in the last few months.
Premium, how do I call it? Was to upgrade to premium? I feel like I need to do it to connect more people.
You might need to make that decision for yourself. If you are connecting with a lot of people on a regular basis, you absolutely might need to do that. I can't advise you whether you should, but you may need to.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, look, they got to make money, right? It's just that it's hard to go back to holding hands, right? Because we're used to having all this free stuff, and now they're pulling it away, so it's a little tricky. But yeah.
Well, Shira, that was actually going to be my question, because I've gotten that message too, and I wondered, is it worth it to upgrade? So it's just only something we can decide for ourselves.
You find for yourself. If you're really making that many connections a month, then yeah, it might be worth it. Yeah. Like with anything in life, right? That we make decisions about payment, like, is it worth it? Yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Well, I have one if no one else does. My job just ended December 1st. So I'm looking at rebranding myself, actually, because the type of work I've been doing is not the type of work I want to continue doing. So on my LinkedIn profile, I went ahead and upgraded because I wanted to make sure folks knew I'm not still at my former employer. And so what I have there now is just it's just a description of the fact that I had this transformative time, and this I've decided I'm going to rebrand myself, and I described the things I want to do, which is to work with direct services with homeless women who have been in domestic abusive situations, because I've been doing volunteer work in that field, and that's really what I want to get into. But right now, that's what I have on my LinkedIn profile. I just want to ask your opinion about that, since I am unemployed currently, but still, because I am transitioning to something else, I want to make sure I had that there. Because if you look at my profile, you'll see I've been an executive assistant. I've done administrative work for all my adult life, but I'm really now ready to transition to something else.
So here's what in fact, I'm just pulling up your profile right now.
Okay.
And well, of course we can't do a deep dive, right? But I
Right.
will say this, as a generic thing. So you're not the only person that wants to make a transition. There are a lot of people
Right.
that decide to do this. Here's my advice for you, and my advice for everybody on this call, regardless of where you are in your transition. Okay, and here it is. It's very, very important that you get this.
Okay.
When you are branding yourself, you need to walk a mile in the employer's shoes. You need to think about where they're coming from and the fact that they are risk averse. Anytime somebody is making any sort of career pivot, whether you're changing what I call your lane, which is your profession, or your community, which is the industry, mission, or sector that you serve, or both, although both is really hard to do, but it's one or the other. The employer thinks you're a risk. They just do, because, right? Does she have the skills? Does she understand our clients? Does she, whatever, right? She actually thinks she wants to do this work. Does she really want to do this work? All that stuff. And so what needs to happen is you need to have a brand, both on your LinkedIn and your resume and your networking, that ties it all together and minimizes the risk. So if you're shifting lanes, then it's a matter of pulling out the skill sets of what you've done that's relative to what you do. Here's an example I brought up a lot. Years ago, I was coaching an attorney. Let's just say he wanted to become a recovering attorney. He said, I want to become a writer. I'm like, that's interesting. How do you turn an attorney into a writer? So I am a resume writer, and I write LinkedIn profiles and stuff. So what I did was I said, all right, let's find all the writing examples in your background, because attorneys do a lot of writing. So I pulled those all out, highlighted them, then wrote a LinkedIn profile that talked about the kind of writer he likes to be, why he enjoys writing, all this stuff. He ended up getting a job as a journalist with a legal trade publication. Meaning he shifted the lane from attorney work to writer work, but kept the community of legal. And that made them feel safe. Like, oh, we'll give him an opportunity. And then guess what happened? He was there a long time. He's now an English teacher. So he completely was able to shift out of legal altogether, because he was able to really bolster up his writing experience. My point in that is that it's one thing to say, hey, I have a passion for XYZ, which is great. In fact, a lot of people do these days. You know, a lot of people wanting to do mission-driven work, and great. Well, a mission-driven organization where you may want to work needs to know you not just have the community connection, but you've got a lane connection too. It's one thing to say, I want to serve this community, homeless population or women or whatever. What are you gonna do in the job? What's the lane?
Got it.
Right? Are you going to be an executive assistant in a, nonprofit that serves whatever it is, right? So that's something to be super thoughtful about. In fact, if you want to give me, I'm happy to do a quick call with you if you want just a little bit of advice. You don't necessarily have to work with me as a coach, but you can just have a quick conversation. I'll put my email address in there. But it's very, very important that you think about the employer's perspective when doing the hire. In fact, Vern, I know you were in HR for a very long time. When you saw people who were career shifting and you were trying to vet them for an opportunity, what was the lens that you had?
Well, again, it goes back to what Shira was saying. When somebody is shifting into a new position and you look at the resume, and even if they get to the stage of the interview, you're vetting them, is this really going to work? You know, there's almost that automatic, you know, bias in the recruiter's head, the HR person's head, the hiring manager's head. Will this really work? And so you've got to be able to overcome that through, you know, the way you present yourself, the way you know, the way you, as Shira just said, create your personal brand. Now, Maria, you said you have done volunteer work
Yes.
with women and abused women and that type of thing. So that's a plus, because if that's the field that you want to go into, you've got some experience and some expertise just gained through your volunteering.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
I do
I'm
have that on my LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So
I
here-
did
so-
add that to it.
So I just found this, I found that on your LinkedIn, and here's my recommendation. And this is a customized recommendation, but again, this could apply to anybody in this call who's trying to, you know, chef, just like we were talking about Susan and how to position, right, that healthcare thing. In your case, Maria, and I wouldn't recommend this for everybody, but in your case, what I would do is I would move that volunteer position out of the volunteer section, move it up to your experience section. And here's how you do that. Treat it like regular experience, like a job, title,
Okay.
you know, organization, title, description of what you did. But the only difference is that next to the title, you have to do it this way. Next to the title, you write this in parentheses, volunteer.
Okay, that
So
makes
people
sense.
know it's a volunteer position, but you're highlighting it to capture somebody's attention.
Okay.
Otherwise, they're not going to even see it. The thing at the bottom, it's like, it's lovely, but they're not going to necessarily scroll down that far. You need
Okay.
to raise it up in their eye, in their scanning.
Okay.
And then
I
I would
wondered.
actually, yeah, and then in the
That's
about
okay.
section, I would write much more specifically, not only the kind of, I would even, it's not even about the fact that you're just in a transformational period. I mean, it is, but it's about writing what you want to do, what kind of mission you want to serve, and what kind of skills you want to bring to the table to serve that mission.
Okay.
That has to be super clear in your LinkedIn profile, in your about section.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Because even with the volunteer part, I wondered how to move it up or how I would include that since it wasn't really work
In your
that I wasn't
case,
paid for.
I
Okay.
would. For other people where their volunteer work has nothing to do with their career field, then keep it down in the volunteer section.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. You've been very helpful. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, sure. All right, Brian or Susan, any other questions before we wrap up?
How about a thank you as always for your generosity
Oh,
Yes.
sure.
and letting us pop in as we need.
Of course.
Here, so I just want to recognize that. We had talked about giving, so I just wanted to recognize that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're always welcome. You're always welcome.
Yes.
I'm gonna go ahead and put my contact information in the chat. Vern, would you like to do that as well?
Sure.
Really appreciate the call today.
It is our pleasure as always. All right,
Well,
so we'll
thank
go.
you.
You're welcome. We'll go ahead and wrap up the call. And Maria, just so you know, at this stage, we'll stop the recording. And then
Okay.
I'm going to open the call for a short prayer call if anybody wants to stay on the call with me. Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right, here we go.